You are listening to Unscripted Moments, a podcast about Propagandhi. On this episode, my guest is Fred van Schie. Fred has been a friend of the podcast for a long time, has contributed art to the show in the past, and he's just generally become a friend. Fred grew up in the Netherlands and now lives in California, where he works with bands, shoe companies, rides his bike, and hangs out with family and friends. Fred talks more about his life in this episode, which is interesting in and of itself in connection to the songs that we get into. But the thing that really stands out to me about this episode is the way Propagandhi landed with him as a young person growing up in Europe, and then seeing how the song's meanings adapted and grew after he moved to the United States. It got me thinking about the question, how would this band land differently with me if I hadn't grown up in the middle of Missouri? How would the band land with me if I had grown up in, say, Sweden or South Korea or the Netherlands? The places we grow up shape the way we digest and take in art. That is what stands out to me so much about this conversation with Fred. On this episode, Fred and I chat about I Was a Preteen McCarthyist, Resisting Tyrannical Government, a Speculative Fiction, and Failed Imagineer. My favorite part of our conversation is the Failed Imagineer section due to Fred's personal experiences with the locations listed in the song. Fred is on Instagram. If you want to go say hi, you can find him at Fred van Schie. That's FredVanSchie. Go follow him and say hello. Please enjoy our conversation. Fred van Schie, welcome to Unscripted Moments, a podcast about Propagandhi.
Thank you very much for having me.
Fred, I'm delighted that you're here. I'm wondering if you can just spend a moment and introduce yourself a little bit to the listeners out there so they know a little bit about who you are and what you do.
My name is Fred van Schie. I'm 45 years old and live in Oceanside, California. I was born in a small town between Arnhem and Nijmegen, which is in Holland. I moved out to California 2007, so like 16 years ago. And for work, I am the global marketing manager at Etnies Footwear.
You know, Fred, every time I see your Strava data, living in Oceanside, California, I'm so jealous about your weather and climate because as a cyclist and runner who plods my way through my athletic endeavors in Buffalo, New York, I'm always extremely jealous. So my hope is that I can get out there and ride bikes with you sometime out in California because I need the getaway. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's definitely, it's funny. I actually just got off a bike ride this morning and it dropped down to 36, which is as cold as it gets. But I actually still wear shorts for that reason, because I have friends in San Francisco or in Holland that, have much worse, are like much worse off with the early morning weather. So, yep.
I love
always
it.
Welcome.
Fred, I'm curious about a little bit about your musical journey throughout your life, the pathway to finding the bands that you have grown to love. Tell me a little bit about your discovery of music. Take me back as far as you need to.
Yeah, this is kind of funny because when I saw your notes, at first I was like kind of doing like my homework, and it kind of took me to like this whole like musical journey, which has actually been pretty rad. So as far as I can remember, the first cassette tape I got from my dad was like a Beatles mixtape kind of. Like this blue cassette tape. I remember that very vividly. And then my dad was really into the Stones as well. So that's kind of like the earliest memories. My cousin was into heavy metal. I started high school in September 1991. And then Nevermind came out later that month. And that basically set me on a path I feel that I'm still on, that I smell like Teen Spirit. I remember that song very vividly the first time I saw it on MTV, and that definitely put me on like heavier music. And obviously, there was a whole lot back then. MTV played so much good music. It was like Metallica and Pearl Jam and Therapy, Biohazard. Like I got into definitely all that stuff. Not into like the super heavy, like not like the Pantera and stuff. That was like too heavy for me, kind of still is.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely I got into like alternative, heavier music from then. And then in 1995, I moved to like the bigger town, like like the city, with my folks. I lived in like a small town close to like the city. And then I switched schools, and that's when I started like going to shows, and I really got into like music, like alternative
Hmm.
music. So yeah, and then I was windsurfing at the time. I had an older friend that I met through some other people, and he really got me into like Black Flag, and I really started going to like I went to like Amsterdam to see like Pennywise,
Oh, nice.
and then every summer in Holland there's like the Lowlands Festival. So Holland, half of Holland is like underneath the like the water level.
Yeah.
So the festival is in the like the county that was built at the end. So that's literally all like under like sea level. Anyway,
Yeah.
they started like this. I was every year in August. I think I missed the first one, but the second one I went to, it was officially called like a camping flight to Lowlands Paradise, I believe is like the official name. We just called it Lowlands because that was obviously the easy one. So I remember going to the one. It's got to be like probably like August 1994. The Offspring, Rollins Band, Biohazard, I saw play there, and I had a friend that I met. I also got into skateboarding at that time, and I had one of my friends that's still one of my really good friends. Him and I went together, and we like camped outside, and then it's like a 3-day festival. And then so I just remember those highlights, right? Because there's a ton of bands like the Breeders played, and some of the stuff I really liked, and definitely them as well. But some of it is just like filler to me, and then there's obviously those highlights, like, and I think those three were definitely like the highlights with the Offspring. It definitely, it was like this time period too in like music where they just all like blew up, like that kind of music just became super popular
Yeah.
for better or for worse. And then in February 1995, I saw the Beastie Boys play. They played at this huge venue like The Hague, and by this time I was like full on like skateboard kid, like baggy pants and the backpack, and I don't know.
Yeah.
That was like my whole thing, and a lot of my friends at the time I that I made through like skateboarding. Some of who I went to school with. I just remember walking in this gigantic hall, and I remember just like looking around, and all these kids like looked like me. And even though now when I say that sounds so almost like, yeah, I don't know, like weird. Like at the time I was like, oh my God, these are my people, like I remember like this is my gang, so I remember that very vividly. And then with the Beastie Boys, obviously too, they kind of opened up a little more like the hip hop side, but then there was Sabotage, was obviously huge at that time. And I just remember the people going nuts, people were just going crazy for that. So that was August 1990, no, February 1995. I went back to Lowlands in August 1995. Doggy Dog, Foo Fighters, Green Day, NRA, this like punk rock band out of Amsterdam. Like,
Hmm.
still a huge fan of that band. No Fun at All, No Effects, Sick of It All, Pennywise. And I definitely got really into Pennywise around that time too. I was a huge Pennywise fan, kind of still am, mainly like their older stuff because I haven't really kept up with the stuff now. But I remember they played in like, so they had like 3 tents and at like the Lowlands Festival, and they played in tent C or whatever, like the smaller one. And it was just like way too small, and like people getting on stage, and I thought the stage almost collapsed or was about to collapse. It was just like out of control. And I definitely remember then like thinking like, whoa, this punk rock thing went from small to huge in like a year and a half or something, and I'm part of the problem there almost, you know what I mean? It just was
Yeah.
like blowing up like crazy. Lagwagon, Millencolin was also huge, and they're obviously out of Sweden, so they played in Holland fairly often. Lagwagon and Pennywise and Good Riddance, they played in Holland often. So I got into it also because that was like they used to play like 30 minutes south. We just like take the train to this club was like next to like the train station, like even on like a weekday. Yeah, and so I saw them play a lot over the years in the
Yeah.
mid 90s.
I mean, that's really lucky too, because like growing up in St. Louis, I was always watching those tour dates, and like, 98 onwards was when I was kind of getting into music. And so I would look at No Use for a Name and Good Riddance and AFI's tour dates, and it would seem to like always be like Chicago, Detroit, and then it would be like Miss St. Louis, and I'd be like Denver, and I'd be like, oh, come on. Like it would always seem like the tour routings for a lot of those bands would just skip exactly where I was. So it's pretty cool. And like, man, that Unknown Road, About Time, Full Circle, Pennywise era was super important for me as well. Like that 3 record run were some of my most formative getting into punk rock albums for sure, is that record run.
Yeah, and that's the same for me. Like especially like I think I got About Time first when it kind of dropped, and then I bought Unknown Road. And by the time Full Circle came out, I was already kind of like passed on a little bit. But the About Time record, yeah, that one was like that just defined for me like the sound, I guess, that I was looking for. That really like clicked with me. The only other thing I think I kind of like didn't touch on, I was in like a cover band in like high school, and we played some like Green Day songs off Kerplunk. If I say it right, we played Bro Him
Nice.
from like Pennywise, and then we played one song from like NRA, which again is his band from Amsterdam, which is yeah, still a huge fan of that band. They came to the US a couple times, but they never got super big. But yeah,
Where does Propagandhi enter your story and awareness?
yeah. So this is where I did some more of like my homework, and again, I kind of like enjoyed going down this like journey. So I'm pretty sure I missed the first Fat Rat comp. But I did own a couple of a copy of Survival of the Fattest, and I had to look it up, which came out in 1996, with the Nation State song obviously on there. So that's probably definitely that has to be the first time that I heard them. And then How to Clean Everything. I don't think I ever owned a copy, but I had a friend who literally lived like two blocks from me, and he skated a little bit, and he had a ton of music as well. And so we kind of like would like hang out at each other's houses on like weekends and just listen to records, you know. And then I definitely remember he had that one, and yeah, we listened to that one a ton. I still love that record to death. Like that, just like Anti Manifesto there too. Just like coming like out of the About Time, right, from like Pennywise. It kind of like is on that same line, and I'm probably like Chris or like the band would not like to hear that, but that to me it kind of like set me. It was like these stepping stones, right? And so, yeah, that
Yeah, I
record
mean,
is still one of my top records of all time.
people like you and me who are drawn to that sound, we needed a band like Propagandhi to be within that sound, but also to elevate and challenge us with like another level of lyricism, another level of musician performance. So like, yes, that like it's totally, they were definitely within that sound for me. But for me, what was so important about them was that they were elevating just a slight bit into different directions that a lot of the other bands that I loved weren't taking me in. Does that make sense?
100%, yeah, 100%. And it definitely like poked me, right? Like sometimes like uncomfortable in a way. Like obviously being born and raised in like Holland, it's very open. We're like the first place in the world that allowed like gay marriage, and so it was pretty open. Like the town that I'm from is still referred to as like Cuba at like the Wall River, so it's very left leaning, very like anarchistic. Like squad houses are obviously a thing still like all over Holland, but it was definitely very left leaning where I came from. And even though it doesn't feel like that, like I was raised very like everybody's equal, and it wasn't even a thing that this, I don't know, like especially nowadays it's still an issue, which is so crazy. And again, the band touched upon these subjects, and the fact that it almost means more now, or it has more of like a meaning now than it did then, is crazy, right? Like how backwards can we go? You know, it's
I know.
sad, you know. Yeah, they were
Yeah.
just right. They were right then, and they're even more right now, which again just shows that where we're going is not forward, but it's backwards, you know.
Yeah, I was just assessing the views of the new Speaker of the House of Representatives for the
Oh
United
man,
States
yeah.
government, and I was just completely blown away. reading this person's being like, these are my views, and he was saying them very, very clearly, and I was like, well, this is really, really bleak. Where's the floor? Like, where's the bottom? It keeps happening over and over from generation to generation. Makes me frustrated, but also grateful that we get to have conversations like this where we have a place to actually say that.
Yeah, it's funny. I was actually, my wife told me about his wife's website because she's completely like conversion therapy, and she had a website and she like took it offline once people kind of like saw it in the last couple of days or weeks. There's his account online. I don't know the guy's full name, but the account on Instagram is called World Clown, and he buys up all these like websites that are almost close to like the representative's name or like rep so and so. Anyway, he bought her site up. And then so he took like screenshots of her old website, and he's basically putting the whole website back online. So he's like, no, no, this is who you are. Like, can't hide. You know, the internet doesn't hide. So
Yeah.
um
Ugh. Well,
but
let's chat a little bit about some propaganda stuff. Have you ever seen them live before?
yes, I did too. And that's where all the digging. I actually looked
Tell
at
me
my
some
phone.
stories.
Let's see. So the first time I saw them live, there was this like skate park in Amsterdam, and it was in a squatted building, and it was an
Mm.
old like I didn't even know the exact English word, but it's like a fridge house is what we call it in like Dutch. So it's where they would like keep like fish or stuff on ice, like all that kind of stuff. So it was this super old building with like these super thick walls. I just remember going there and up the steps. And anyway, like the skate park was on like the third floor. So that's actually like the name of like the skate park. So it was called Skate Park Third Floor, and it's one of the first indoor parks in Holland. So
Oh,
we have a
cool.
lot of rain, and so I would take the train. As a student in Holland at the time, you get a free pass for the train and the bus. So as soon as I had that, when I was like, I believe you had to be 16, I would just travel. And like that's kind of when I started to skate as well. So I would just travel and go there a lot. And then one of the weekends, I'm pretty sure I planned it. Either I went with some friends, I don't recall exactly, or my folks dropped me off because my dad had an aunt that lived in that area. But that's when I first saw him. So they had this like punk skate festival going on. Um, yeah, basically just in like another room, really close to like the skate park. And I just really remember that Chris said like, "Thank you for everybody that's like not smoking in here." So smoking got banned in Holland only like 5 or 6 or 7, 8 years ago, like definitely after I left. So at that time, I remember that too from like bands or like even from all the skaters. If you go to Germany or Holland, like people just smoke indoors, like like it was completely normal. And so I didn't smoke. I never have. I never will. And so for him to say that to me as like a 15, 16-year-old kid, like, thanks for not smoking. And I was like, yes, that's what my friends need to hear. So I definitely remember that from that show. I don't remember like the songs or like the playlist. I just remember that vividly. And again, as somebody that like didn't smoke, especially at that time when all your friends, when you have all these like all this peer pressure, it just like I don't know, that just really sticks with me.
Nice. Was that a John K. Sampson era show, or was it a Todd?
So no, I as far as I like looked it up, it was April 1996.
Oh, so that was John. That was
Yeah,
like
it had to
John's
be.
last. It was like one of John's last runs with the band because Todd's first shows were in December of '96.
Yeah, I don't know when Less Talk More Rock came out. It's probably after.
It was '96. I don't remember the exact day.
Okay. Okay,
But
so it's probably on that tour then.
yeah,
April
yeah,
1996. Yeah, that's what I found out. April 1996. So yeah, definitely super early. I'm definitely stoked on it because I heard some people on the show before, and I was like, I saw them for the first time in 2000 something, and I was like, oh, like I know when I did, but I was definitely super early. And I mean, I was gonna go skate there a lot, right? Almost every weekend, but I definitely went there to see them, and see the bands. Again, I don't even know which other bands, but I definitely remember seeing them play there. And yeah,
amazing. Is that the
so
only time you've seen him?
no, I've seen them quite a bit. I actually went into my calendar the other day and look because I was going to put this in like my calendar, and then obviously Apple is pretty good with the calendar. So I saw them February 2014. at the Echoplex in LA with my buddy Ashton. So there's a big gap, right? So there's a huge gap. So I'm not sure. I don't think I've seen them in between. I think like 1996 to 2014, unless I saw them some other time in Holland. But I moved out to California in end of 1997. I moved out here. No, that's not true. I moved out here in 2007. Sorry, 2007, 16 years ago. So I don't think I've seen them in between. So I saw them in 2014 up in LA. Then I saw them in Orange County, which is also California, November 2017. I saw them on a Saturday, and then the next day they played in LA, and I went there to see them again at the Regent. So 2 days in a row. I remember like the Orange County show, especially. That's kind of like this pit. It's like it has these steps kind of in the floor, these like huge steps, right? Not like super small steps. But anyway, like the last step takes you into the pit, which is like lower than like the rest. So even if the place is filled, you can see the band from anywhere that you are. But I just remember standing just outside the pit, and because I just wanted to see them play and like scream along, and that's exactly why I just remember being like my voice being like completely gone the next day, because when I went to the show up in LA, I just watched like like my voice was completely gone. Then I saw them in 2018 in Amsterdam with three of my friends. I actually tried to help Chris get back into their YouTube channel, because at the time I was helping a bunch of bands and skateboard pros with like all the social media stuff. So I hit up Chris, and then I think on Twitter, and we talked, and I was like, I think I can get you back, because I had a friend that worked up at YouTube. So I was like, I can help you. Like, I usually charge for this, but it's all good. And then as I was looking at my flights back to Holland, and then I saw their dates, I'm like, Chris, is there any way you can get me some tickets? And he's like, yeah, cool, you're on the list +1. And then I had to hit him back like the day before. I'm like, any chance you can do +3? And he's like, no problem. And then I saw him after the show, and I just went up and I was like, hey, thanks for the tickets. And he's like, oh, cool, like, so good to meet you. And then till this day, I have not been able to get him back into like the YouTube, because my friend up at YouTube switched roles at the time, and he lost access to what was needed to kind of like look behind the curtain. And so, Chris, if you hear this, I'm really sorry, but thanks for the free tickets.
Oh my God. Did you get a chance to see them when they were doing their West Coast shows last year in 2022?
Yeah. One more thing I wanted to say about the Amsterdam show. So this is like at the Milky Way out of Amsterdam, which also has like the first floor. And so
dude,
I was there the first.
I saw Mogwai there, and it was absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I was in like the smaller room, I believe, of like the Milky Way, but it's still a really cool venue, and like, in like the first floor, and we're just standing all the way in the back because we just wanted to see, like down. And I remember just like a few songs in, I was like, I can't just stand here. Like, it's rad to be here with all my friends, but and I remember going into the pit, not like crazy into the pit, but kind of like close to it. And I saw like two of my friends that I used to skate with, they were like, and obviously they didn't even know that I was in Holland, so that was kind of cool, because they're like, what? Wait, like, like so excited. So then I saw them. Yeah, so I saw them October 2022 at the Music Box down in San Diego. Super weird venue, like almost one of the worst venues I've ever been to. Didn't like the venue at all, but I was a little bit under the weather and stuff that week, so I was planning to do all 3 shows. Actually, like, got tickets for all 3. And I remember DMing with Chris on Twitter for some stuff, and he's like, dude, I got you or something, or I think I was gonna get him some shoes. He's like, dude, if you ever need lists. I'm like, no, I already got tickets, all good. Like, I just want to support, it's like no problem. So I went there. I remember Steve Caballero was there, like the pro skateboarder who's also in this punk rock band called Urethane. If you haven't heard of them, check it out. They're actually pretty good.
And the Faction.
Yeah, OG from the Faction for sure.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing him there up front with the whole band, with like Urethane. He's like, oh, like our singer Tim, if I have his name correct, is a huge fan. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm a huge fan too. He's like, have you seen him before? And he's like, no. And I was like, what? I'm like, you never seen Propagandhi before? He's like, no, I didn't even know what they really sound like. So it was actually his first show seeing Propagandhi, which I thought was pretty cool. And I had some other friends there. So they did San Diego, Pomona, LA. Yeah,
Mhm.
and I was just too sick. And I remember my friend who lives pretty close to me called me. He's like, I'm going to the show up in LA. Fuck it. I'm just driving right now. And I'm like, you want me to pick you up? And I'm like, man, I'm just so drained. I'm like, I can't. But I definitely had planned to go to all three. But yeah, I had to skip that one. So I only did one of them.
Isn't it super funny though? You've seen them a couple times in a row in the past, and I went to three shows in a row in Winnipeg. I did three shows at the May 2022 Southern Ontario dates, and I'm just like, how is this possible that I just don't get tired of it? Like I go to the shows like multiple nights in a row, multiple nights in the same week, and it's just with this particular band, I feel like I could see them 6 or 7 nights in a row, and I just like would be like at the end of like 6 or 7, I might be like, okay, I'm good now. But then, like before that, at the end of night three in Winnipeg and in Ontario, I was not tired of it yet. I was like, okay, amazing. But I could have done a night four easily.
Yeah, I remember going to the two shows in whatever I said, like 2018. No, what was that?
Yeah, I think it was 18.
2017. Anyway, I went to like the second show. Some of my friends like, really? Like you're going again? And I'm like, dude, like I don't know. You just see other stuff too, because you kind of already know like the song order, and I don't know. There's just I don't know. I actually really like it. I can highly recommend it, but I haven't done it with too many bands. I think I did it with Against Me once, who I also really like. But yeah, you just see other things like night two or
Well,
even three or
and what's so crazy is like whenever I go see them now, I just presume it's the last time I'll ever see them. Do you know what I mean? Like even if I have tickets 3 nights in a row, I presume nights 2 and 3 will get canceled for some reason. You know what I mean? I never take it for granted anymore. And if you look at what's going on now, it's November 2023. They haven't played a show since like October 2022. So we're already at 13 months now since they've last played a show. I mean, it's like that's a huge gap of time, you know?
yeah, obviously I have some. When I looked at like the times that I've seen them, there's definitely some big gaps, right? Like a couple years or like even more. So it's like I don't know. I guess I just hope that they come back. I think also like living down here now, like Southern California, I think you get a little bit more bands coming here because they always can like sell out shows. I think here, right? There's just more people.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like an easier one to do. And I don't know. So hopefully they'll come back. But I definitely feel that too. Every time I'm like, well, they're coming back to California. They're coming back to California. I'm like, damn, if you live somewhere else. But I've thought about like if they're gonna do a show like and go play in Denver, like I'll fly out and go to the show. Like I definitely don't want to miss next time they do a tour or something.
I'm so lucky that I live so close to Toronto because I know that Chris being a huge Maple Leafs fan, they'll always play Toronto pretty much no matter what. So I'm like, yes, if there's going to be a tour, I'm pretty sure I'm going to be able to go.
Yeah.
Well, let's chat about some tunes. Whenever I got in touch with you, you picked 4 songs as your top 4, and they are I Was a Preteen McCarthyist, Resisting Tyrannical Government, A Speculative Fiction, and Failed Imagineer. So I like the fact that you've gone throughout the eras of the band in your song selections. But let's start with the tunes from Let's Talk More Rock. We'll go into I Was a Preteen McCarthyist first.
And I was a lucky just 8-year-old McCarthy, good stuff. 1979, I spent spring break on the flight line. On the base in the Carolinas, US version of my
Tell me a little bit about why you chose this song as one of your tops.
So when you asked me to do like 4 songs, I was on a drive to an event somewhere over the summer, and I just remember like playing it like on shuffle, like their whole catalog. And every time I had a song I liked, I would take a screenshot. And then when I came home a couple days later, I remember going through them and go like, okay, I just want to like mix it up a little bit and also like touch maybe on songs that weren't discussed yet. And again, this is like 5 months ago now, 4 months ago. So maybe obviously that has a little bit passed. But yeah, I wanted to definitely do a little bit different. At first I tried to do like one from every record, but then obviously there's more than 4, and then it's just hard to pick favorites, like I said before we went live. Like you in the podcast have like forced me to like pick a favorite album, pick a favorite song. But like a couple months ago, I was like, Greg, you can't do this to me. I can't pick favorites.
I have to. I had to make you pick, you know?
I know, and that's fine. Like I said, I definitely had a fun time going through it and like doing that. So I want to say I picked these songs as well go to the different records. But again, like these first two are obviously of like the same record. So
So let's start with I was a preteen McCarthyist. Why?
yes.
What is it about this song that made you pick it for your list?
So obviously this band has like, like the music is like super rad, but it's like the lyrics, right? I think that's when you really get into it. And again, like English is not my first language. It kind of has become that living in America for 16 years. But I was pretty big, like when I was in high school, like my favorite two classes were like geography and like history. And like obviously when it comes to history, at the time too, we, every year you have a couple subjects, and one of them for us was like US history. I remember that in my senior year of like high school. So that's definitely obviously what this is about, like Senator McCarthy and stuff, And I remember like being like interested in that just as as like a person in class in like high school. But then also when I was listening to these records, I was like, whoa, like they're talking about this. Like I was just talking about this in class. Like I just thought it was like so cool that a band was just like talking about that, because again, I love like all the Pennywise and like Lagwagon, no effects are kind of more like, with all due respect, but like kind of like fart jokes, and like, and that's all fun and games too. But then I don't know, when it really comes down to it, like stuff that like makes you think obviously is, at least to me, like way more impactful, right, in every way. And I think so that really honed in on me at the time. Like it just, I just thought it was so cool that I was talking about this like dull stuff in school, and then here's this band that I really really like, and they're talking about this stuff. And so
Yeah, and like to me, what that does is you get a lesson in school, and everybody can picture sitting in a classroom with one of their teachers in the past, right? And you're getting information, you're paying attention here, you're not paying attention there. You got some notes here, some taking a test there, and some of the information sticks, right? But it's when you get reinforced through secondary forms of analysis, like in a song or in a documentary or something like that. That's kind of when it really is like, oh, other people have learned about this too, and here are their thoughts and opinions on it. So a song on top of something that you've just learned about in school is like this secondary level of analysis that reinforces what happened in the classroom and then actually makes the information stick in the brain in a way that a lecture about something else that your teacher was talking about would never do. Does that make sense?
yeah, 100%. I mean, I guess I can like give the band that as well, where it's like it made me pay attention even more to like history. Right? I definitely know that because maybe as my 16-year-old like skateboard mind wasn't into history at all, but I definitely was into history, and that's probably partly because of this as well. I definitely see that link there. So
I love it. Do you have any like favorite lyrics in the song, or any like life lessons or stories that kind of jump out at you because of preteen McCarthyist?
yeah, so obviously too, what I like when people like describe the band, or when I have to like describe the music, like especially now, like I definitely want to call it like trash punk or trash metal even, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what I always liked, and I think that's also what I like about punk rock, like in general, is that you can often just hear what they're saying, right? It's not like screaming and you cannot make out of it. So with this song too, it's kind of sounds fairly basic, like especially the intro, and like you just hear every word that they're, like it doesn't go super fast either. But the one line that I really that are, there's a few lines, but like the first line that I have is like, separated flesh from bones and honed its skills on lesser humans. Like I almost have to
Yeah.
sing it. I can almost not read it. But like the lesser humans is obviously too. I remember this also from like history class with like all the Nazis, and when they talked about the Jews, right? It was always like lesser humans. And again,
Mm-hmm.
like coming from a family or like a country or a place where I was raised at, where like everybody's equal, like that definitely stuck with me. And obviously too, like, reading about like the World War, and which happened pretty heavily in like my hometown as well, in like Holland. Have you ever seen the movie A Bridge Too Far? That's
Mm-hmm.
actually the bridge in my hometown. So
Mm.
there's a ton of stuff from like the World War II around us. So the World War II stuff always made a huge impact on me, also because my grandpa would often talk about it and how we had to eat like basics, and I don't know, I just remember that stuff. So that lesser human part just hits home in like a lot of aspects. And again, even now, as sad as it is, it's like, when it's like Israel, or even obviously in like the
Dude,
US, or
I was just thinking about that because yesterday obviously was the huge ground invasion into the Gaza Strip, where the Jabalia refugee camp was essentially bombed into a hole in the ground. And I was on social media yesterday watching people in Jabalia pulling lifeless teenage and preteen bodies out of rubble. And everything, like from cats were being pulled out, like cat bodies were being pulled out. I mean, it was crazy the amount of things that I subjected my brain to yesterday, but it's exactly what I was thinking about, how this honed its skills on lesser humans line was visible yesterday, Halloween 2023 in the Gaza Strip, and it was all over the internet, and you can see it for yourself if you choose to do so. But that line does not become less relevant, you know?
no, it's crazy. Like obviously like that whole thing with Israel. And like I've turned off a little bit of it, because again, it's like so gnarly what you're getting into. And it's like no one's right and everybody's right and everybody's wrong and no one's wrong. You know what I mean? It's like, but I feel like too, like I've been really like trying to understand like why the US has such a tie with like Israel, right? And obviously been watching some stuff online, and there's a religious connection. And but I feel like too, when it really comes down to it, I think like the US also treats the world as like, they approach the world as like a bully, and like
Yeah.
Israel does the same. And then now obviously like Hamas in no way is the answer, right? And it's in no way it's right at all, like, because that's what people try to see, like, well, if you're anti-Israel, you're pro-Hamas. It's obviously way more complicated than that and has all these layers in it. But it's like Israel has been a bully, still is a bully, like insanely a bully at the moment again, right? And then,
Yeah.
people like fought back, and then now they got punished for fighting back. And it's like, I don't know. I rather speak up against the bully, and I think we all should, you know what I mean? And it's like so people are so one-sided. I mean, as the whole world is, right? The last
Yeah.
too many
Well,
years. But
and for the US, I mean, it's totally just about sphere of influence and presence within a region of the world where its influence is not great, right? If you think about all of the neighbors around it, you have Egypt, you have Jordan, you have Lebanon, you have Syria, all regions of the world where the United States' influence is very low. So to have this one little area where there is an economic and military ally for the United States, it's purely about, money and sphere of influence and power. It's really just an endless conversation. But I totally get you. I hear what you're saying, big time for sure.
yeah, like even like with like all the settlements, right? Like imagine going, like me coming to your house and go like, I live here now, and then like I would get mad if you like fought back or like throw like a rock to the wind, like what, I don't know. It's like so people are so one-sided, and their claim to the land is like fuck the border, right? Like it's, I don't know. It just makes me so sad that people can be. I don't know. I like to think if I would live there, I would go like, I'm not gonna live in like a settlement, and what, to live behind a fence with people with guns around me to keep me safe. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's a life you
Yeah.
want to live. I don't know. It just, but I mean, it's all messed up. Talking back to my grandpa, he passed away 20 years ago, but I remember him talking to me about World War II a lot when I was a kid. And again, it was like all around us too, like all the memories and all the graves and like, all this, a lot of like US army graves were there as well. Anyway, he always thought about that too in Israel. And this is like in the 80s, right? He's like, it's never gonna solve. It's never gonna. And I remember that vividly as well the last couple of weeks, him saying that. And my mom repeating that as well the last couple of weeks. Like,
Yeah. I
man, it's
mean,
so sad.
yeah, and think about a child who born and raised in the Gaza Strip has never left the Gaza Strip. Now maybe they are an orphan or they are the only member of their family left, and they're 5, 7, 10 years old. What is their life like now? What will ideology become? Do you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
absolutely terrifying. But what an interesting connection to this song, too, the way that this song becomes more timely with each passing generation, even though it's 27 years old at this point. It's kind of the power of this band, too,
100%. And that kind of comes back to like the last two lines of the song too, which I also have like lined crossed under, like terrified the morning you woke up and realized that if and when you jump ship, you either swim for shore or drown. Don't let the fuckers drag you down. That last sentence, don't let the fuckers drag you down, I almost use it in like everyday life, whether I'm skating and the cops kick you out, or you know what I mean, like doing like the thing that you want to do or that you love or that doesn't really maybe like fit in. Like I use that line every day in my life, like as like a slogan to like live by.
Yeah.
But that whole last line, like swim for shore or drown, like obviously I moved out here 15, 16 years ago. Like it wasn't easy. Like I had to do it and I wanted to do it and it worked out, but it's like, I don't know. So that definitely rings a bell with me too.
Yeah,
there.
it's a risk. I mean, I moved around too, but also this, the on supporting cast, the line, it's like, you got to keep on trucking anyway. This band has this way of ending on a positive note that just like kind of begs the listener of the song to not entirely relinquish hope entirely, that last line on this song, that last line of keep on trucking, they have a way of reminding us that we're here and we're not entirely powerless, and to kind of latch on to like our little ways that we can be of influence and a source of positivity in those around us. So I just love it whenever they throw in a nice little positive ending,
Yeah, it's very true. I definitely like learned that as well from like you guys with the podcast, that's to like see those themes in there. I definitely also like the way the song ends, where it's like, don't let the fuckers drag you down, and then it's like hard stop,
Yeah.
It's like it just makes you think too even more about that last line. But yeah, I just love that. Don't let the fuckers drag you down. I say that, I can't say it out loud obviously with my daughter now, who's like 4.5, but I use it a lot in my head for sure.
Let's talk about resisting tyrannical government.
Jesus saves, rescue stores. The workers slave, the rich get more.
Tell me a little bit about why you chose this song for your song selections.
Yeah, it's funny because the one thing that I wrote with this on like the side notes is like, I don't care for hockey at all. Like it's so funny.
Hilarious.
Obviously, I know like the band, and there's a lot of the people that you have had on the podcast, and even those guys that have the band to just sing about all these hockey songs from Ohio. I forget where they're from. I listened to that episode recently.
Oh, the
And they're
Zambonis?
Yeah, and they're just so into hockey, and I was like, I have like nothing for it. I have nothing with it. Little history there. I played soccer until the age of 16, just like most boys growing up in Holland. And then at 16, I was like so over the whole jock mentality, and obviously I found skateboarding, which actually did to same old story to the video from the Pennywise song. That's how I got into skateboarding at age 16,
Nice.
and I literally dropped everything, and it still till this late, like set the tone for like my life. Anyway, I'm just not into sports, I guess, just in general. So I don't have a whole lot with that, and I actually had to like read the lyrics. Again, this is partly on me because as a 16-year-old kid, I could have definitely read all the lyrics and dug deeper in it, but I just didn't. And that's, I think, where you guys come in as well with like the podcast, where I'm so thankful that you guys spend 2 hours or 3 hours or 4 hours going through these songs. And I was like, oh my God, I've never even realized this part, or I like learned all this stuff from it. But the section in like the middle with the Oilers and goes completely by me, right? Like I say that without any shame. But I really liked the end part, where we, why don't we plant them mechanical virus and erase the memory of the machines that maintain this capitalist dynasty. And then especially is what I like underlined, and I know this has been talked about in a previous episode, but and yes, I recognize the irony that the very system I oppose affords me the luxury of biting the hand that feeds. And I feel like that's, living as a white male in Southern California, like I have a very luxurious life, right? Obviously I'm not crazy rich or anything, but I have a very I'm very blessed with the life I live, and I definitely realize that, and I try to do my part to like help people that are lesser fortunate, whether it's through my work or a little bit, like help out where I can, or like donate my clothes, or that are sometimes still like almost new, but that line definitely hits home with me. So, and obviously too, that's where like the last line, but that's exactly why privileged fucks like me should feel obliged to whine and kick and scream until everyone has everything they need. So on my own social media, I definitely, voice my opinion about the gun laws in the United States, and that, and I sometimes feel like I'm just like screaming into the void. But I
Same.
have some other like immigrant friends that sometimes say like, damn, I that's so rad of you to like say that out loud, and all your friends are all our friends are these Americans. And I definitely kick some people against the shins, but it's like I cannot not speak up. Like, how can you not say like kids are getting like murdered in like schools here, and Second Amendment, sorry. I'm like, hold on, what? I don't know. Like I was just raised
Yeah.
differently, and I was definitely raised to like speak up when something is wrong or when you don't feel right about something. So yeah, those last
Yeah.
couple lines are
I mean,
all about.
well, and for me, what's interesting to me about your story is that since you didn't grow up in the US and have these other views, you also have this like additional interesting privilege that I'm just going to point out, because you probably can travel on a non-US passport, right?
I only
So
Yeah, so I don't have a US passport.
yeah. So
So
like for me, if I ever needed to like flee the country or something, it's different for me because I'm not a citizen of elsewhere. So it's like it's almost an interesting thought that if you needed to relocate your family quickly, and you would be able to,
we have talked about that, which is crazy too in a way, like I'm definitely never planning to move back to Holland.
But it's a
Because
nice little
this
insurance
is home, but
policy,
it's,
isn't it?
yeah, it is 100%. Yeah, it's funny. We had
Yeah.
a thing about work. We might have to go back to Amsterdam. We have a European office there with Etnies. Anyway, we might have to go back in May, and then they're like, "Oh, you have to like fill in like a visa now." And then somebody was like, "Haha, like it's payback time," because obviously every time you come to the US as like a foreigner, you have to fill in all these forms. You can only stay like 90 days or 180 days if you apply for it. And I don't know, if you've been to like Cuba once, you have to like go to like the embassy in like the country that you live to like get like green, like get like vetted again. Anyway, like I was yesterday in a meeting, I was like, well, just send me, like I'll go to the customs in no problem in like no time. So yeah, I'm definitely don't even plan to ever have a US passport. Also, Holland makes it really difficult to have like both. So that's
Hmm.
part of it. Then mine was up under Trump. So there was no way I was going to be an American citizen under Trump. And then so now I'm good for another like 9 years. So it's just, I just got to pay $400. And then I don't, like, obviously can't vote, but there's obviously another part of that, which makes it sometimes, I feel like when people hear me scream about stuff and left leaning policies, that I like wholeheartedly like support. But it's like at the end of the day, I can vote, but the way it works in the US too, like Orange County, like San Diego usually vote blue anyway. So then my thing doesn't matter. And like California as a whole is blue. So then my one vote, which again is not ideal, but my one vote doesn't really matter there. So that's also like a part of it. And then yeah, at the end of the day, I still am I'm a Dutch person, and I always
Yeah.
will be. So um,
I love
it
it.
works just fine.
What an interesting little detail. You know what I mean? I love that we were able to talk about that. But like, dude, as a teacher, as a high school classroom teacher, like I have vivid memories of being in my former classrooms, like standing there when school shootings were happening constantly in the country. and going to work every day and being like, I wonder if I'm going to get shot this week. You know what I mean? Like having those thoughts standing in a classroom in the United States is a very bleak existence. And it's one that makes me not really miss the classroom now that my work and my teaching is mostly virtual these days. I just don't miss it because I feel like I'm putting myself in less in harm's way, you know?
It's my biggest fear, like it's funny, like last year or 2 years ago, I was, with my wife, and we have 3 kids. So she has 2 boys that also live with us, 16 and almost 14, and then our daughter's 4.5. But she's like, what are we doing? Like, why are we risking this? And that's like my biggest fear. And I'm sure that's the same for any parent. But it is the same for any parent in America, right? But obviously it's not for everybody, which that's the weirder part, right? That's the stranger part to me, where it's like, okay, we need more guns and more guns. We already have like more guns than anywhere else. So when is this graph gonna like really like change the tone? Like, when are we gonna get saved? Like, how many
Never.
more guns does the US need to? Obviously the answer is never, but it's
Never.
like, but that's the whole story. And I live in a very like, we actually live like really close to like a base here down in San Diego. And it's like, like sometimes when they do like bomb testing or like gunfire testing, and people go on Facebook, and then I look on the Facebook page like, what's going on now? And they're like testing every day from like 7 to like 11, and people go like sound of freedom. I'm like, fuck. Even if you would get invaded, like I'm not sure if that's the sound of freedom, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about some more very, very positive, happy, amazing things. Speculative fiction. Let's jump forward in the future.
Stuff is all below. Below the child remains. Pax Americana plates. The stupid fucking laser pucks were just a start. How will you waste that
To 2005, to this extremely happy, hopeful song. I'm obviously joking, but it just kind of it reminds me of what you were just talking about with regards to being surrounded by militaries because of the imagery within this song. Tell me a little bit about why you chose a speculative fiction for your third track.
So this song was uploaded to YouTube. So I kind of missed a little bit of Propagandhi, the supporting cast record. Like I definitely wasn't like super close to them at like that point in time. I obviously got them, a few years later, and I got back into it. But I definitely remember this. So they did like I don't know how you call it. They did like an online thing for like the new guitarist, right? Like I think that I heard about that later, but they did like an online thing, like send in like your video and you could become like the new guitarist of the band. So when Lin was announced, I definitely remember that news coming out. They put up this speculative fiction version in like the practice space, right? Like first ever time playing with Propagandhi, I'm assuming. Till this day, that's my favorite video on YouTube, like of all time, any video, like period. Like I don't know, the intro of that song, and then I think we can all kind of put ourselves in place then, like, oh my God, you're gonna play with like your favorite band, and then like the backup vocals, like first time ever playing, like you have to focus so much on the guitar, and then you're still doing like the backup vocals already at the same time. I don't know, that song just really got me back into the band, and I thought it was a cool thing too at the time. So again, at this time I was helping a bunch of bands like Guar and a couple other bands with like their social media, and so I thought it was so cool for this punk band that does things their way to kind of like do this like online contest. I don't know all the details there, but I thought it was so cool that they did it this way, like send in your tape and you could become the next band member. So yeah, so that video, that just really got me back into the band and like front and center, So
nice. Fun note about that Gore mention just now is that Gore show we were talking about in Buffalo a while back. I got completely drenched and sprayed and everything at that show. And that was my first time ever seeing Napalm Death was at that show. And it was like absolutely stunning. I cannot believe what an absolute powerhouse Barney from Napalm Death is. But I just wanted to point that out because you said gore, and I was like, oh, I just saw that gore show.
I remember that tweet from you after that, or Instagram post. I remember that when I got you tickets for the show. So
Heaviest voice of all time is Barney from
yeah,
Napalm Death. I'm totally
yeah,
convinced.
yeah.
What are some of your favorite lines and stuff that really resonate with you from a speculative fiction?
So the one that I underlined, there's actually one more, but the one I underlined first is like, we don't care if we're destroyed, we'll never capitulate. We'll take the whole fucking world down with us in flames. So to me, this is like Trump's like mantra. Remember, what the this is like probably 2 years ago now, maybe even three. Like North Korea, and there was all this tension, and I was like, oh my god, he's just gonna send us straight into like World War III, and he literally does not give a fuck what's gonna happen, just for his own ego. So that line, those two lines really, yeah, just like no plan, just like testosterone, mindless brain, just like going for it without, I don't know, without thinking about what the real repercussions are, because you can push a button or you have access to the nukes, like
Yeah,
that's crazy.
the boringness of being a powerful male is kind of how I see it. You know what I mean? It's just like I am just a boring, powerful male, and this is kind of what we do. It just is so mindlessly boring and pathetic and predictable.
Yeah, it's just, and then like no cause for alarm. Like I love that propaganda style too. Like as we talked about, like, okay, what it's all good. It's all, like no cause for alarm. So,
Hmm.
and then the other line is like the one at the end where like replaced with other stupid lullabies, like you can have my guns when you pry them from my cold dead hands. Um, Obviously again with the gun stuff we just talked about, when I was trying to make like the flyer for the show, I was actually looking for like Wayne LaPierre's picture when he, because I believe it's like a quote from him, right? You can have my guns when you pry from my cold dead hands, or he said something similar.
Yeah.
But I couldn't find the exact one. But yeah, the NRA is just pure evil in my opinion. And yeah, just, and like again, like when it comes back to like the neighborhood here, we have a lot of like the "Don't Throttle Me" flags waving around, and when you would say this to these people, like they would like freak the fuck out, but and it's like the "Don't Tread on Me" flags too are kind of funny to me, because it's often when it's like older white males that have everything made for them already, right? They're like, they got money, they have a house, and it's like, no one's threatening on you, like no one's
Yeah.
threatening on you, like you're the last one that they're coming after. And then, and if they would, you're the first one to go down, because you're probably fat and overweight, and
Well,
like,
and they have everything they could ever want. So the proof that they've never been tread on is right there in their driveway, in their huge RV, and their Wave Runner collection, and their $70,000 Chevy Silverado, and the house that they live in. So the proof that they have never been tread on is, manifest in like physical assets and property. Does that make sense?
yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's like, it's so ironic, right? It's almost laughable, but again, like this is part of like the problem, I think too, is like those type of people are part of the problem in the US, and they think they're part of the solution, or that's what everybody should strive for, or you know what I mean? It's like, how about you have a little less and we all have a little bit, like the people that don't have anything have a little bit more, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Just,
Fred, something that I really love about chatting with you is that I lived in the UK for a while. I've lived outside of the United States. And so for me, so many of my perspectives on what I viewed as normal growing up in the United States shifted whenever I moved abroad for 5.5 years. And I came to see so many of the things that we see as completely normal growing up in the United States as how freakishly abnormal they are when you leave this country and you are other places for extended periods of time, whenever you drop your guard a little bit, because you can travel and you can appreciate things like going to other countries, but it's not until you live outside of the country that you come to see just how abnormal so many of the things about the US actually are. So I love the fact that you've got these extended periods in multiple places in your own life where you walked in and you saw the abnormalities immediately. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I remember when I first moved here, I went to a wedding. So my ex-wife's dad, his best friend from high school, married another man, and we went to like their wedding, and he gave this whole speech at this party that we went to for them. Like, and this was right about the time when gay marriage was, I think, either becoming legal or about to take off again, because it's obviously been going back and forth a little bit. And I remember calling my mom after, and she's like, that's an issue. Like it's a like a pressing issue that it's not okay for anybody to marry a person from like the same sex. I'm like, yeah, like I did this. He just gave this whole speech about how it's not just granted, or it's not a thing for everybody, which I don't know, that definitely blew my mind. I definitely must say too, I've listened to the podcast obviously from not the very first one, but definitely from like the early days. And there's a few
I remember you
times
from 2020 for sure. Yeah.
there's a few times where I'm like, Greg, I can't believe you're saying this as an American, as a school teacher, because I think if it really comes out or something, like, but again, like you lived abroad, because when I say these things and when I post up on social media, I have some of my friends and they go like, well, move back to Holland. But, I get that and whatever, it's fine. I just brush it off. But then for you as an American to say that, and like, I don't know, it like, again, I believe it's like the right thing to do and you have to speak up. So I applaud you there, but I can definitely see as an American saying that it's like you're the minority by a landslide, So
Yeah.
I applaud you for speaking up. And definitely a couple times in the podcast where I listen, I'm like, whoa, I can't believe he's saying exactly what I'm almost thinking too, right? But I'm like, damn, that's a pretty bold statement for an American school teacher, even more, I guess,
Well, and if you, I mean, yeah, it was definitely a little rattling for Keith and I over the early days of the podcast to kind of find our voices and what we were comfortable saying. And eventually we were like, we just presume no one is listening in our real lives. And so we just kind of let it fly. And it was a lot of fun, very liberating for us. But like, I'm from Missouri, and Keith is from Indiana. So it's like, we're not from like Portland, you know what I mean? Or New York City. We're from like the middle.
Yeah.
And so it was a really powerful experience for both of us to have those early days of the podcast where we just were like, wow, this is really how I feel inside. And I'm entering middle age and still processing so many of these things. This podcast has been like the greatest gift ever for me for that exact reason.
And it gives me hope too, for Americans, because I think Americans are very like proud and like loud and like kind of arrogant, maybe not necessarily in like a bad way. They're just confident, right? But then at the same time too, that sometimes deters you from opening your mind or like listening to people or like being open to other ideas. And so listening to you guys again with like where you guys are actually from, it's like, okay, like I know whatever, I'm not like end all be all, I'm always right, you know what I mean? But it's like it gives me hope that there's ways that people can actually open their minds a little bit, and hopefully there's room for growth and change over time.
Yeah, I mean, for me, a few of the most important experiences were going to Hawaii for extended periods of time and seeing the ways that the Hawaiian indigenous population was essentially herded into camps, like tent camps, like in the beach parks around the state, and the rates of homelessness for the indigenous populations of Hawaii when I was living there. So that was huge for me. Then living in Mexico as a white male Midwesterner who spoke no Spanish and being surrounded by a million people who didn't speak English, that was huge for me. So you really have to, in my view, put yourself in situations where you are forced to experience discomfort, because that's where the real growth takes place, whenever you have to adjust in real time beyond just like your cushy norm that you've known for your entire life. So those are a few of my examples of shifting in my own worldview.
Well, you've definitely like lived some places, like I went from like the Western world to like the Western world, you know what I mean? Like as far as that, and like Dutch people are not really frowned upon. Every time I go like, oh, Dutch people are always so nice. I'm like, cool. Like I definitely have that all going for me. So in that sense, I've definitely didn't go out of my comfort zone there. I feel like, dude, like the places you lived, and even like up in Canada and like the UK and Mexico, I'm like, damn, that's, yeah. But that I agree though. Like getting comfortable being uncomfortable definitely makes you grow. So
Love it.
I had a little less of that than you did, but yeah.
I love it. Well, let's chat about your last tune. I have a theory about why you chose this song. You alluded to it earlier with the reference to Arnhem and everything like that, but let's talk about Failed Imagineer. Tell me a little bit about why you chose Failed Imagineer.
You run, kick and kick back from my neck, transformed into a damaged environment. Never spoke on the slaughter, he witnessed firsthand. Oh, this is the world I brought you into, man.
So I definitely came across this song on YouTube when it came out, which is kind of like the new way, right? Of like trying to find new music, or like the algorithm will just give you stuff, right? And I'm definitely not mad at this one. I'm assuming it was even like a boosted video at the time when it dropped. Looking at the number of views it has these days too. But yeah, I think this song takes me back to like the first two records, right? The sound of it.
Yeah.
And then
I love that about
obviously,
Victory Lap, by the way. Victory Lap as a whole to me is like a hearkening back to the Less Talk sound, but with the skill of the supporting cast Failed States years as well.
yeah, I have to say I'm not fond of like every song on the record. You guys have definitely like forced me to listen to it more to see if to kind of like open my mind for it. But I definitely don't. I'm not a big fan of every song on the record, but this one especially too, and like the way it opens, and it definitely brings back that Less Talk More Rock era of it just comes in swinging. And but then yeah, so I've heard it a bunch. But then when I listen to the podcast again, I can't give you guys enough of the credit here for that, because then it talks about Arnhem, which again, I grew up in a small town between Arnhem and like Nijmegen, which is very key part of like the World War II ending. It was actually called Operation Market Garden, with the bridge in Arnhem and the bridge in my hometown from the movie A Bridge Too Far. A Bridge Too Far is actually the bridge in Arnhem. They tried to go all the way up to Arnhem from the south. Anyway, so for some reason I'm listening to the podcast. I'm like, what? Arnhem? Hold on. Like, how have I not heard that? So then I listen to the song again. Now I clearly hear it, of course. And then yeah, again, Dad just put that song on such another level. It's obviously like PTSD, and again, like I talked about my grandpa earlier. Like I remember as a kid, like 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, like him talking about it and him showing me books from like the World War. And my mom actually still has one of those books at my parents' house. So it's like, yeah, that is just, it just hits me, and I just couldn't believe that the song talked about almost pretty much where I'm from, and like this huge impact that it still has. I just went back there with the whole family at the beginning of August, and we went to 2 World War II museums, and it's just my wife and I basically cried at the end of doing the tour. It's like so gnarly. And again, it comes back to where we are now again. Like Israel wasn't even obviously on the plate then in August. It always has been on the plate, right? Just for the record, but it's just crazy. It's just so, people are so cruel, people are so cruel. So
do you happen to have a picture of yourself at any of these bridges in Arnhem or anything like that?
Well, we drove over both the bridges. I definitely made an effort as well with the family to drive over them. I'm not sure if I have a picture. I definitely have a picture at the museum. Well, I can see what I can find. It's got to be something.
Yeah, I would just be super fascinated to see any of these pictures from these trips with the spots that are referenced in the song. One of my favorite things to do when I was up in Winnipeg with to see the shows a couple years back was to visit all the spots in Winnipeg that are listed in Propagandhi songs, like going through River Heights and going to the former sites of the murals on West Broadway, like being in the spot where a song references is always so cool to me. I'm just such a nerd for music stuff like that.
Yeah, I remember being at the museum in early August and like seeing some like the pictures of the bridge in Arnhem, and then again the song comes into play, right? Because you kind of like see where they were hiding at, and there's this one little tower where like a bunch of the soldiers were in, and you know all the holes in the wall, and I don't know, just like that song definitely describes it really well as well. You know, like the
Yeah.
whole scene is just like in my mind when I listen to that song.
What are some your favorite lines in this song?
I actually don't have any lines in there. I like it was really about the Arnhem part in this song. And like the whole like
I love how you
PTSD.
I love how you referenced your own grandfather though throughout the entirety of this conversation, the ways that he was doing his best to instill in you a certain appreciation for the different eras and what delineates certain periods of history and differentiates that from like what we are able to see now. It's I'm a as you can probably imagine, because I am an obsessive podcaster with two podcasts, I love oral histories, personal stories, getting people's stories committed to a recording that then is become available to other people. Like I love doing this kind of work. And so I really love the fact that you had conversations like that you can remember to this day, even though your grandfather passed away a long time ago now, it sounds like, but you can still remember those moments, you know, it's really cool.
Yeah, my dad's dad passed away first when I was 7 or 8, and I think my other grandfather on my mom's side, I must have been like 15 or 16, so that's still like 30 years ago. But it's funny, like before I was doing like the homework for this, I don't, and that sound not to be this, but I don't think about him too often. But as I
Right.
was doing all my homework for this, like I remember it comes back, you know, like it just remember how much impact he has. I'm almost tearing up here about speaking
Yeah.
about it, but it's like I underestimated it in a way or something, or it's like it's just one of those life lessons that's just there, and you don't even know, I guess, why it's there, how it got there. But it's like now with this, like it definitely, you know, definitely
Yeah.
like brought me back, being at his house and talking to him about it, which is pretty cool.
So cool. Now I'm having flashbacks of what I can remember about my own grandparents' houses, you know, just amazing.
Yeah.
Well, Fred, what a fabulous, wide-ranging conversation. What are some concluding thoughts about like what this band means to you? Tell me a little bit about like how Propagandhi kind of matters to you as a person in the world who cares about stuff.
Yeah, it's like obviously when like I remember when you like send over like the notes this question, I feel like this is what I just put down in like four lines, but it's like best band exclamation mark. If you don't think so, you are wrong. The lyrics, the music, so ahead of its time. Album titles, song titles, lyrics lines have inspired me for years, and they still do. Um, that's what I wrote. And it's like, but again, I can't not give you guys credit because like the podcast put them on a whole nother level for me. You know what I mean?
Mm,
I was a big fan and I know their lyrics, but I don't know their lyrics the way you guys dissect them. You know what I mean? And obviously there's some lines that I completely understand, but there were a lot of things like obviously before we went live, we talked about the shell episode, right? Like where it's like, oh my God, like that song was just like a funny little blurb
dude,
on the record. And it's
I know.
like AK Press and like that. I forget his name right now. The guy you
Ramsey
guys
Canan.
Ramsey was such a cool, and then to hear somebody that's almost 60 and be so fired up and like, you know, and not, I don't know. So I don't know, it's just like the band was right then, and it's more right than ever almost, you know, which again, as sad as that is, you know, but it's just like, yeah, to me, like in my work, and obviously I work for like a skateboard shoe company that's, you know, like that's some of the scenes that the band like heavily like was against, you know.
Mhm.
Like as a scene as being like a bunch of bros, especially obviously like out here and like homophobic, and so I try to almost like be like an ally of the opposite, you know, and try to bring like more balance and like equality. And obviously my influence is small, but I feel like small steps is where it starts, and I hopefully it can, you know, over time can always like grow bigger. And I think that's what the world needs as well, you know. I think the first episode that I listened to when I was doing like my homework was back to the Motor League with John from the Mountain Goats. Big fan of that band too. Really like that band. And I think I found it on Twitter, which either you maybe found one of my tweets, or I saw one maybe like Chris like retweeted on the Propagandhi account. But and then I think I listened to the ayahuasca episode. And then that went completely over my head. Like, I'm not a drug user in any like, and I just remember like listening, and I was like, man, I love this band so much, and I didn't even know what song it was about, but you will probably know
Duplicate Key is a
Zacaro, yeah. So I liked the song, and then I'm like, oh my god, like this is almost not helped me with like my love for the song or my like love for the band. That was like so out there, like out of my space in a way, you know. But then with the failed Imagineer song and like talking about Arnhem, and I just couldn't believe that I did not caught that on my own. And then like Willem came on the podcast from like Intellectual, and then I tried to find Intellectual on Twitter, never heard of them, saw that they like followed me on Twitter. They're
nice.
From my hometown, and I was like, how a punk rock band from my hometown, and I have no clue who this is, but they know who I am because they follow me on Twitter. And then it was Willem, who I used to skate with at the same square where we always used to skate, you know. So I don't know. I just just like again, like they're just the best band. Like and I'll repeat it. Like if you don't think so, you are wrong. Like I really believe that. Like I mean, you see the picture in the background too. Like it's,
I see it.
They're just they like their songs influence me till this day, every day, and I listen to them almost every day, if not every day.
Amazing. Fred van Schie, I know we've been threatening to do this podcast together for a long time. It has been absolutely splendid. The ground we've covered, the topics, I love conversations like this. I love that this band and music in general can elicit such wonderful ways to spend a couple of hours of our time on Earth. And I'm glad that other people out there who have made it to the end of our conversation have gone on this journey with us. I'm really grateful to you for your time and your stories and your connection to these musics. Thanks for coming on the podcast, Fred.
Greg, thank you so much for all you do. I'm sure I'll speak of like all of the people, even if they have not made it all the way through to like the end of this, and also to like Keith and Steve, because I think what you guys do is like amazing, and for us fans, I think it's super rad. The amount of work that you guys put in and give back to us, you know, in the band, like, thank you.